Steve Dotto here. How the heck you doing this fine day? I am thrilled you are joining us, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday, which will begin in just a few moments. But before we begin, let me get a few administrative details out of the way so we don't have to clutter up the time during the actual webinar. First, this webinar is being recorded and it will be available in replay on both Facebook and on YouTube. We leave the replays available to you for 1 week after the webinar is broadcast, and then after that we take the webinars and we archive them for the purpose of our patrons. More on that in a few moments. Every week we host these free webinars. They are on topics around productivity, content creation, and a little bit in online marketing. They're available to you free of charge. However, we are a community-funded channel and we appreciate your support. And you can show your support in 3 ways. The first way is what you're doing right now, just being here, commenting, sharing it with others, being a part of our community. We appreciate that. But in a more practical sense, you can also support us through the Super Chat, which is available to those of you viewing on YouTube. You can always give us a tip if you find something incredibly valuable in what we share. But our main way that we support the Dotto Tech channel and Webinar Wednesday in particular is through the generosity of our Patreon community. If you drop by patreon.com/DottoTech, you can support us financially on a monthly basis here, keeping Webinar Wednesday on the air. But there are perks. Oh, indeed, there are some fantastic perks. The most important of which is we archive each and every one of these tutorial webinars, and the entire catalog is available to our patrons. Now, sit back and relax. We appreciate you being here, one and all. And today's webinar is going to be something special, starting in just a few moments. Steve Dotto here. How the heck you doing this fine day? And welcome to Webinar Wednesday. I am so happy that you folks are joining us today. We've got a great show planned for today, looking at the future, kind of taking a look at the future, trying to gaze into the crystal ball as we try and figure out what's happening in the world of tech as we finally put a button on this hellish year that is 2020, and we can see the new year on the horizon. And I don't know about you, but I certainly hope that the new year is a heck of a lot better than the existing year. The year has been so tough that my staff needs a break, and April is currently taking a break. So that means that we have drafted into service late night in London. Liz, how are you doing, Liz?
I'm good, thank you. I am multitasking like crazy. There's so many people in the room, and I can't keep up. I'm so sorry if I haven't said hello to anybody. I'm trying my best.
Yeah, well, that's all you can do is your best. I mean, you're not April, and you have a different skill set. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but you will be compared at the end of today.
Oh my God! Okay. Thanks, Steve. The pressure is on.
I gotta thank Liz so much, because Liz does not enjoy being on camera and on air. She finds it very stressful, and so everybody be extra nice to Liz today, because she works very hard, and we just have to kind of ease her into the whole live streaming thing and make sure that she feels comfortable through the whole thing. You okay now? You breathing okay?
I'm okay. I'm breathing.
Okay, so here's the plan for today. Here is what we have planned for the big show today. We're going to be taking a look at kind of in the crystal ball what's happening in the future of technology. But I got to tell you, holy jumping, it ended up being, as I started to work on it and kind of figured out all of the different things that I wanted to say, I realized that it's a bigger story than can be compressed into a 1-hour webinar. But we'll do our best. We'll certainly we'll be taking comments and questions as we go along. As is typical for Webinar Wednesday, those of you who have joined us in the past, which I believe most of you have, I pre-recorded a little video, a demo, which walks through the entire topic. It's about 23 minutes as I go through my vision of what I think is kind of going to be happening next year as far as tech goes. While that's going on, both Liz and I will be in chat with you answering your questions, and then we will come out on the other side and I will answer as many questions as possible through to the top of the hour. If for any reason you have difficulty with your internet, or the Amazon guy shows up at the door with a bunch of packages you have to receive, this replay will be available almost immediately after, regardless of which platform, if you're on Facebook Live or YouTube Live. And then that replay will be available for a week afterwards for you to view at your leisure or share with friends. After that week, we archive the video, so it's available for our patrons, which gives me a chance to have a big shout out and a thank you to all of the supporters of Dottotech. We are a community funded channel, and our patrons at Patreon keep us on the air. They're kind of the wind in our sails. They keep us going. And so what we do is they give us a little bit of money that keeps us on air. We ask for $10 a month. And in return, they get some wonderful perks, as well as they get the satisfaction of knowing that they keep Dottotech on the air, and they keep Webinar Wednesday giving you free tutorial content each and every week. So a big shout out to them. And Liz is dropping the link into the chat so that if any of you decide that you want to join us and support us, you can check it out, and we appreciate that support very much. One last mention is we now have a sponsor here for Webinar Wednesday, which we are thrilled, and it couldn't be a better sponsor for this particular purpose. It's Restream.io. It's the technology we use to multi-stream to all of the different platforms that we use, and they are just a terrific piece of technology. Restream.io gives the opportunity to do all of your streaming from a beautiful studio app, which we use, that allows you to integrate graphics and audio and guests and video, etc. And it allows you to stream to multiple platforms and to record that and to repurpose that content in a variety of different ways. Again, Liz will be dropping the link in. If you're interested in discovering more about Restream.io, we would highly encourage that support. Oh, good heavens. I know off the top I mentioned Super Chat, and already we have people supporting us here. Trudy, thanks so much for the tip from Super Chat. We appreciate the extra support. That is awesome to have you guys kind of step up and help pay the piper, which is wonderful. All right. Looking forward to the new year. So Liz, any predictions of what I'm going to be predicting as the big stories for the year, just out of curiosity?
Oh my God. I know one thing I'm excited about personally, and you know what that is? That's the thing I just told you that I'm thinking of buying, which is the M1 Mac Mini. But yeah. I'm really excited for the 32 gig. Can't they just release it already?
I know. And Jeff is already asking, what about the Apple M series? Obviously, I talk about it almost right off the top of the video in a few minutes. The M series has been on my mind ever since Apple announced it. And I've got some interesting thoughts on it, and I think it's going to be a big story. I think Apple's thrown down the gauntlet to all of the other computer makers with this particular chip, because it's so low power. But I don't want to steal the headline, because I talk about it within the video, and I worked so hard on the darned video. So why don't we do this? We're about 7 minutes in, perfect timing. Let's run the video. Let's run my predictions in kind of a look forward to the important technologies in the year coming. While we're there, you ask as many questions as you want. We will answer as many as we can here in chat, and the others we will take on calls once we get on the other side of the video. So without any further ado, let us do this. Liz, we will see you on the other side. Folks, we will see you in just a few moments. Until then, have a good time judging how good I am at gazing into the crystal ball. I'm going to kick this off to tell you right now that I think I bit off more than I can chew by saying that I'm going to have predictions on what's going to happen in 2021. Because I had a lot of opinion on different things that I thought you might be interested in. But then I started to do research, and I realized how woefully unprepared I was to make intelligent predictions, because technology has become just so vast in the different vertical markets that it's working in, that for anybody to stand up and say they're going to make predictions about what's happening in the world of tech today, that is hubris at the highest degree. There's just too many places. There's too many things when you start reading about it and you start reading what other people are saying, you go, oh my gosh, I never knew that was happening at this point. And it really should be something that we should be looking at for 2021, but I don't know how to intelligently articulate it. So this is my best effort at things that I have been examining over the past year, things that I work with and that I feel I can offer some value in. Consider this to be a conversation starter and not etched in stone. This is the beginning of a conversation about the trends that we are going to see in 2021. So let's talk about Apple. And I'm going to talk a fair bit about Apple, probably because I live in the Apple ecosystem. But there's also, I think, a lot of really exciting news coming from Apple. It's been kind of strange. They've stealth released multiple things, one after the other, instead of kind of the big launches that we're used to from Apple, where they just overwhelm us. But there's a couple of really impressive things that are happening in the Apple world, and some that are kind of disappointing and distressing as well, as is usually the case with Apple. But the number one thing that I think of when I'm thinking of Apple is the advent of this new M1 chipset that they have now in the MacBook Air, in the MacBook 13-inch, and in the new Mac Mini, which are just amazing breakthroughs. And here's the thing about the M1 chipset. First of all, it is ridiculously fast. For things like live streaming and for so many different applications, this chipset runs incredibly fast. And the big reason is there's kind of a thing that goes hand in hand is speed in computers is always typically kind of gone hat in hand with heat coming off of the chips, because all of this electricity, all of this data has to transfer from one kind of silo within the computer to another. And all of this transfer of these electrons going back and forth and firing back and forth from one chip to another chip creates a friction, and that is actually creates a heat, which has always been a problem. And heat is the single biggest issue that kind of holds computers back from becoming incredibly fast. This M1 chipset is designed to be incredibly power efficient, and because everything is in one, the computation for the computation to happen, data isn't being handed off from one chipset to another chipset, going back and forth in order for it to figure out the computing stuff that we're doing. Consequently, a lot less power is used. Consequently, a lot less heat is generated, and everything gets a little bit better as a result. Now, here's the thing about this, though, is these computers seem to come like a bolt out of the blue. They just, boom, we're here. They were announced to us, and everybody's going, oh my gosh, we're just gobstopped by how fast and how cool they are. I don't have mine yet. I'm really looking forward to getting it. I'm waiting for a few little things to happen before I order one, but I'll be getting one in the new year. I can promise you that. And I just got a new Mac Mini less than a year ago now, but I'm still going to get a new one. I'm going to be right up front with that. Having said that, it seemed like it kind of came out of the blue, didn't it? It just like, all of a sudden the M1 chip is there. And it seemed like an overnight success. Well, in truth, this is an overnight success that is 10 years in the making. See, the M1 chipset is based on Apple's mobile chipset that they have for their iPhone and for their iPads. And they have been building horsepower. And people who are paying attention are going, like, for example, the last version of the iPad that I got, or this iPhone 12, going, my gosh, these things are incredibly powerful. Now, we're limited by the apps running and kind of the screen real estate and in the interface and what we do with them. But the computers themselves that are on these handheld devices are incredibly powerful and also very fuel efficient. They run very cool, and they get extended battery life, etc. But we've just been kind of overwhelmed by the growth. So now what's happened with these new computers is they've taken this chipset and they've taken away the one limiting factor, which is the tiny little batteries that we have, and they've plugged them into wall power, unlimited power, going into incredibly efficient chips, and they were able to increase the horsepower, increase the processing power of these chips. I don't know if it's exponentially, but it's by a large factor, and the result is mind-blowing efficiency, and it's changing the world. I think every other computer manufacturer is going to be scrambling to catch up with what's happened with Apple and the M1 chipset. So seeing the computing horsepower, which we've always seen improve and increase, and it's to the point that we expect our next generation of computers to be massively more powerful than the previous generation. This was an acceleration, the M1 chipset, one of the biggest stories in the new year as more and more people come out and as Apple releases more form factors and how everybody else is going to be scrambling to catch up. Now, unfortunately, along with this, user upgrades are pretty much a thing of the past. We've accepted closed systems in our phones and we've accepted closed systems in our tablets. And we haven't really had to, up to now, accept a completely closed system in the Apple ecosystem with our computers. We've had user upgradable computers with the Pro Series and even the Mac Mini. I upgraded the memory in mine because the memory modules were separate from the processor. Apple, I guess it's fortunate design on their part, and they've always wanted us to do less user upgrades. They've always wanted the box that they build the computer in to never be opened in its entire life if they had their way. We now have a situation where upgrading memory on these, impossible. It can't be done because the memory is integrated right in the main chipset. So there's no slots. There's no slots for us to upgrade our memory, no way for us to internally upgrade the hard drive or any of those sort of features. We can plug lots of things into it, and there's actually limited ports, but the ports are very powerful. We shouldn't have any problem with expandability as more available hubs. We have to add pieces of hardware to make it work. But user upgrades of cracking open your computer and doing an upgrade, that is, in the Apple world, I believe it's a thing of the past. We're just not going to be doing it anymore. Looking at the other ecosystems, I think Facebook is the one which is going to be the most interesting this coming year. I think Facebook faces so many challenges. The backlash and the fallout to the kind of the choosing sides that was seen to happen in the last U.S. federal election, the migration of much of the people of the conservative population to Parler or to a system that they consider censors them a little bit less, the scrutiny from the government, and of course all of the criticism that comes along with that, I think is going to be an internal challenge that Facebook is going to have to come to terms with, and Twitter to a certain extent, but mainly Facebook as far as really being in the limelight as we move into the next year. Now, interestingly, we see that and we think a lot about those issues, but I don't think that that's what keeps Mark Zuckerberg awake at night. I think what keeps him awake at night is trying to figure out how he is going to migrate his platform to compete, not with Google, not with Apple, not with Amazon, but with WeChat, with what's happening over in China, and the quasi-integration between church and state that happens there, and all of the additional features that WeChat is able to incorporate that really are game changers for them and gives them long-term a huge advantage over a platform like Facebook. I'm speaking primarily of the ability to do financial transactions. That ability to pay for things using WeChat and in that how it is integrated itself at the heart of its society through that and the other services it offers is something that Zuckerberg just has to salivate at the prospect of adding to Facebook. And of course, we would be horrified if there was that sort of integration happening within Facebook. And now where they're moving with it and what it's all about as far as Zuckerberg is concerned, I'm sure, is I've got an article that I've linked here called It's All About Messenger. And I believe that we are going to see the most change in Facebook Messenger. And if as a marketing person, the instigating conversations, one-on-one conversations, either through real people or through bots, which is increasingly going to be prevalent, is really the direction that Messenger is going. Plus the fact that they can harvest so much more information if they are advertising into Messenger and all of those things. I think ultimately it's going to be a real challenge for people to accept having ads driven into Messenger when they're having conversations with their friends or with their coworkers or colleagues, or business conversations having ads pushed in. So I think that Facebook is going to be walking a real tightrope as far as that goes. But that's the one that I'm watching, is what's happening with Messenger. I'm also really fascinated what's happening in virtual reality with Oculus. I'm thinking about getting one this Christmas, and just the power of that platform is really intriguing to me. And I know that there's an entire subculture growing around the world of virtual reality that most of us that haven't yet dipped our toe in the waters are pretty oblivious to. So that is going to be something I'm going to be watching, and maybe hopefully something that I'm going to have some time to play with this coming year. Maybe that's going to be under the Christmas tree for Steve as an Oculus for Christmas. That would be a lot of fun. The two other ecosystems that we're going to talk about today are Amazon, which I find incredibly fascinating, and Google, which I am actually less bullish on than I am the other platforms, currently speaking. Let's start with Amazon, talking about what's happening with Amazon. And Amazon, I think, faces a real risk in the coming year in regulation. I think if any company is going to get broken up, I believe that Amazon's retail services and entertainment division, maybe as one, is very much in risk of being split away from Amazon Web Services. When I look at the future of Amazon, I think AWS, Amazon Web Services, it's so important. It's kind of like they're the railroad barons owning the right of way. By owning Amazon Web Services, where all of the traffic is happening, where all the services are happening, where all of the data is hosted, they are really crushing it. If they had gotten that last big contract back from the U.S. government to host all of the Pentagon's cloud services, they would almost be an unstoppable freight train. I mean, it's really probably a good thing for competition that Microsoft stepped in and managed to win that contract. But Amazon Web Services are just a freight train, just cruising along. And I think that they're going to be looking at it long and seriously. The legislature, the legislative people are going to be looking at it and determining that it might have to be split off. And Amazon is at the greatest risk of that happening, which is, of course, a huge bump in the road, and it will dominate how we look at what happens with Amazon this year. But their hardware division, with what's happening with the Alexa and with the Amazon Home devices, their entertainment division, Amazon Prime, is just rocking. So much content being delivered there that I think Amazon is really was one of the ecosystems that absolutely has the wind in its sails and going to be driving ahead. And they just do things differently and better than the other platforms. And the other platforms are really going to have trouble nipping away and kind of carving away pieces of the Amazon pie, whereas Amazon, almost anywhere they look, they manage to compete and do quite well. The latest offering is now they're starting to get into podcasting, and so that's going to be, that's just the latest step in the Amazon direction. They are the lean mean machine right now of all of the ecosystems in my mind. Google. I think Google's in for a rocky road this year. They do so many things. They do pretty much everything that everybody else does, but in almost every place, they don't do it quite as well. The only thing they do better is total integration and, of course, search. They own so much data that we would be foolish to think that they are going to, slip very far. But I think they will struggle for their identity this year moving ahead. Pushing as hard as they are into Meet, trying to create the Office suite and the communication suite, when really they don't have as good a platform as, say, Microsoft Office does in 365. They don't have as good a chat tool as Zoom, for video conferencing tool as Zoom, and their messaging is far behind everybody else's. I wonder here, and kind of going back in the day, if Google doesn't rue the fact that they put Google Plus out of its misery. Yes, it was a horrific social platform. It was rift with problems, but it was a foot in the game, and it was, as terrible as it was, it could only get better. And of course, we will never know now. And so they really gave over that space to Facebook and completely gave up in the social platform space. And I am, as I say, wondering now if they don't kind of rue the fact that they did that, and wish that they could not be, breathing more energy into a platform like that. It's going to be a tough year for Google, I think. We could have probably made today's whole webinar about creepy things that are going to be happening in 2021, or creepy trends in 2021, and I'm sure that there'll be plenty of chat in the chat about this. But the things that caught my attention, there was a report by the Gardner Group, and it's the first time I've heard this term. Maybe I'm a little bit late to the party, but it's called the Internet of Behaviors, and it kind of sent a chill down my spine. Globally, Gardner predicts that by the end of 2025, the next 4 years, more than half of the world's population is going to be subject to at least one IOB program. And if they've already got an acronym for it, it's bad. IOB, Internet of Behaviors. What is an Internet of Behavior? What is it? An example? The example they give in the document is a truck driver. That there's a telemetric unit on his truck or her truck. And as that person is driving their truck to deliveries, the company that is employing them is monitoring their driving behavior, how quickly they're going, if they're suddenly braking, if they have aggressive turns, if they are parked too long in one place, all of these sorts of things. It's monitoring your behavior. And that's just one example. And we can start to recognize with the types of devices that we have, how these behaviors can expand. We have people working in the home office now, and we've often talked about presence, about how the boss or how the company knows if you're working or not, based on, especially if you're a remote worker, and how that interaction of trust happens between employee and employer when we're doing distance work. The Internet of Behaviors kind of says trust. We don't need trust. We can measure. We can see exactly what you're doing. We can monitor it, and we can make it a condition of employment, perhaps. In my mind, very creepy thing. What do you think? Actually, that Gardner Group study is a great resource if you want to look at kind of the top level trends for 2021. And I will share the link to the document in the notes that we send out to you afterwards. So make sure that you've signed up to get the notes afterwards. But this is the graphic that they created as they presented their findings. Internet of Behaviors, which we just spoke about, ultra creepy. Distributed cloud, intelligent, compostable business. That's a tough one to get my head around. I'm not going to talk about that right now. Total experience strategy, anywhere operations, AI engineering, privacy-enhanced computing, cyber mesh security, and hyperautomation. And all of these kind of piggyback on different types of technology. So the distributed cloud, the anywhere operations, and the total experience strategy, that all really dovetails on what's happening with 5G and how we are having incredibly high bandwidth and incredibly high access to data plans, pretty much anywhere we are if you're within a type of a city environment. The distributed cloud is kind of following on what we're talking about Apple of closing down the system so that we can't upgrade the system. Well, now you're going to have a computer without having a computer. The cloud now has the potential for being the computer for you, and you just need a network access device for almost all the work that you're doing. In fact, one of the reasons that we don't have higher bandwidth M1 processor or higher memory M1 processors, so the Apple Minis, one of the reasons I haven't bought is there's only a 16 gigabyte version. I really want to have 32 gigs of RAM available. All of the 32 gig RAM versions that they built out of the gate have gone to Amazon for Amazon Web Services. At least this is the rumor I hear. And they're being used, and you can actually book a Mac Mini as your cloud computing service through Amazon, and which is just mind blowing. So now we don't even need the computer to have the computer. The distributed cloud is definitely one of the big trends. Anywhere operations goes hat in hand with that. If you're going to have the distributed cloud and you're going to rely on your computer being in the cloud, you need access to it anywhere you go. 5G falls right in the middle of that. Incredibly high bandwidth, incredibly high throughput. For normal business type applications, more than enough. I mean, there's enough bandwidth for you to be dealing with video operations and video applications. So there's certainly more than enough for typical office type work. So we see those trends happening as well. The really tough ones to talk about is privacy. What's going to happen with privacy? Because I mean, it's like that cow left the barn so long ago that we've given up our privacy. But I wonder if the increased migration to ecosystems and people willing to shut themselves off. I mean, seeing people leave Facebook. And I don't know whether those people are going to come back to Facebook, but if they really leave Facebook for a platform like Parler and don't come back and don't re-engage, that represents a fairly interesting shift. I think the fact that Facebook will now be denied all of the data that these people would be putting forward. And so could we see that maybe we're not going to be able to ever recapture our privacy? Well, I don't think we ever will be able to recapture real privacy. But is there a possibility that we will closet ourselves within one of these ecosystems, one of the silos, and say, look, I am uncomfortable with my data being shared, but I'm not going to share it with Google. I'm not going to share it with Facebook. I will share it with Apple and Apple only. So in the Apple ecosystem. Or I'm going to be comfortable playing ball in the Amazon ecosystem, only sharing my information in there using those services. Now, there's always going to be some crossover, but if you use a tool like the Brave browser, you can mitigate the search information that somebody like Google is getting. And so people we can't keep ourselves completely private, but maybe we can pick one sphere of influence and maintain and kind of live within that as much as possible. It might be one of the directions that we're going. Is nothing like doing a prediction of technology for the year to come when you're considered something of a technology guru, was considered something of a technology guru, to serve up a big platter of humble pie with so much stuff going on that I have no idea of, that as I went through, as I filtered through the list. I mean, we haven't talked about e-commerce solutions. We haven't talked about banking and online financial solutions. There's so many different aspects that we haven't even talked about today. But there's a few things that I wish I knew more about. I know they're important, but I just don't have a lot of firsthand experience in the space. And I mentioned, that VR, virtual reality, and augmented virtual reality is one that I want to know more about. And that's going to be fun to learn about, because I could just get an Oculus and start to play and start to kind of get a lot more feel for what's happening in that space. But the world of what's happening in artificial intelligence, in all of the things that are happening there through things like face recognition and how that's impacting the world. I think in the news now, I don't know whether this is factual or not. It's hard to tell these days. But the assassination of the Iranian nuclear scientist, the rumors that I was reading about are that he was identified through advanced facial recognition, and it was a robotic assassination, pretty much, as far as that goes. That's horrifying to think about where we are getting if they're using face recognition to that extent. And we know that Amazon has been licensing a lot of their facial recognition to different police forces, and so we're starting to see that whole kind of nightmare scenario starting to actually find application in the marketplace. So I wish I knew more about how it was being used and what the pitfalls are and what the opportunities might be as well. There's another term that has come up, which I'm starting to hear more and more, and that's called ethical AI, ethical artificial intelligence. Now, what the heck is that? And how is that played out? According to the documents that I'm reading about it, it's companies are agreeing to have a set of standards on how they use data, how they use the information, and all of the edge that they have on consumers and on the marketplace, and what's ethical to use and what's not ethical to use. But of course, I believe those ethics are in the eye of the beholder or in the eye of the shareholder in a lot of cases. But I wish I knew more about what was happening in the world of ethical AI, and certainly something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, amongst so many other things. I could keep on rambling and prattling on here, but I'm really interested to hear your thoughts and to move this conversation now into chat. And we are back, and I'll bring Liz back up. Hey, Liz.
Hey.
Did you stay on top of things?
I tried my best. There's a lot of great comments here, and a lot of people having tech that I'm very envious about. Like, you have a ton of new tech.
The M1 processor. So many of them have it already. We'll lean on them.
I know, right?
To answer the questions. That is just a little awesome. So, folks, you noticed that during the video feed there, that I had a note up, kind of a document that I used as kind of a rough outline and script. So that's a document that I prepared beforehand, which has all of the different links and all of the different resources that I have. And what we've started to do now is to just share that document with you as the kind of the show notes, and so that you have access to all of the same research that I have, as well as a rundown of what we talked about. So if you're interested in that, everybody who registered through email for this particular live stream, you will automatically be sent it. We'll send this out in a little while today. But if you haven't registered, if you've come to us just because you're subscribed to our channel on Facebook or on YouTube, and you want to receive that note, make sure that you click on the link that Liz is dropping into the chat right now, which will register you for this and put you in so that we can email those notes to you. It's also got a couple of videos embedded in it that I found. One cool, Liz. It's a video of all of Amazon's newest stuff. And again, how do we have time to talk about this? Amazon has a drone through their Ring purchase It's a little drone that lives in your house. It's not a drone for outside. It's a security drone, and it's like a Roomba drone for security. So what it does is it flies a pre-patterned path through your house, giving you video to your phone so you can see what's happening in your house, then flies back and lands itself in its docking station like your Roomba vacuum cleaner. It's sucking up the information of what's happening in your house and delivering it to your phone.
You can't hide it. You can't hide these things.
I don't know what to think anymore.
No. Well, at first when you told me this, I thought that's really creepy. Unless you have a mansion, I don't see why you would need one. But then you did mention that it's great if you have elderly parents,
parent
right?
or something like that you wanted to check on and that sort of thing. Yeah, if that sort of thing. Yeah. So yeah. At any rate, it was there is so much, and I now see that we're getting a bunch of comments of people asking what we think of different things. So we'll get through as many of these as we can. But before we do, I would be remiss if I did not once again mention our excellent technology partner here for Webinar Wednesday, which is Restream.io. It's the technology, since we're looking at technology for next year. This is the technology that drives live streaming, at least as far as Dottotech goes. We use the Restream Studio as a broadcast tool to allow us to pull all of the different assets together to broadcast them to you here on YouTube Live or Facebook Live, wherever you happen to be consuming, or if you're watching the replay. And they are a terrific partner that allows you to multicast. So we could be going into Twitch now as well. We could be going into a variety of different other live streaming platforms, as well as this live delivery that we're delivering at this point. So again, Liz will drop in the link, but check out Restream.io. They are a wonderful partner. We're thankful to have them. So let's dive in and let's get a couple of your questions in, as many as we can. We've got about a half an hour, just a little under a half an hour left, and there are so many interesting comments. So I don't know if you're managing to scroll back and capture them, but I'll read them off as I see them here, Liz, and then you can just keep populating more into the spreadsheet here.
Okay.
So question, throwback to old tech. Actually, one thing you can always do is you can also, Liz, you can also give me the who the name of the person.
Oh, the who. Okay, yeah. All right. Sorry.
It's okay. That's okay. We're no judgment. No judgment. But April did better.
I forgot to copy the names, guys. Sorry.
So the first question is, are you still in favor of the Synology NAS? Looking at a 6-bay chassis, somewhat future-proof my system. Will these and the drives go down in price over the next 6 months? What do you think? Okay, I think that the cost of the storage, the cost of the drives themselves will continue to drop. I don't see the cost of the chassis and the networking case with all of the networking gear and the kind of the programming power or the hardware in it dropping that much in price. They seem to have kind of stabilized at a value. So I don't think they will go down in price. What will go down in price is the cost of storage. I don't know if you've looked at the price of purchasing a very large solid state drive today, but it's a fraction of the cost that it used to be. So all drives, storage is going to continue to drop in price. But I think they're a good investment if you have a lot of video, if you have a lot of photos, if you have a lot of data that you want to back up. Sorry, this was from Adventure with Time. If you have a lot that you want to back up, I still think it's good value. I wouldn't wait to hope for a better deal at some time in the future. They seem to be fairly stable. I might be wrong on that, but that's what I see. The next one, is there any truth to the rumor that Facebook wants to have just one messenger service by making Messenger, WhatsApp, and Instagram DMs all in one app? It certainly seems the way that they're going. I believe that Facebook's big technology play this year is going to be trying to get more of us using Messenger and making Messenger far more ubiquitous. But they face a real uphill battle there because so much of what happens with Messenger happens on our phones. And so many of us have Apple phones, and Apple is pushing up their messaging platform and adding increasing functionality to it with the new release of iOS 14. Messenger, the iPhone's messaging apps are that much better. And we see Google trying to push up its messaging scenario as well. So this is a turf that all of them are fighting it out in. But as I said in the video, I believe that Facebook recognizes that this is a battle they have to win because it's the services you attach that are going to make such a difference. And if you can start adding e-commerce services, making that app where you purchase, it then opens the door for Facebook to more effectively compete with an Amazon and certainly with what's happening in the Apple world. I think that they're going to pull them all together. I think that they've, technically speaking, done a pretty good job with Messenger. Not talking about the creep factor, just talking about the technical clarity. But that certainly is the direction that I think they're going to be going, and it's going to be fascinating for you and I, who really don't have a dog in the fight, to be able to watch it and to see how they all end up being used. But that is, I believe, what they're focused on. Jeffrey Corrigan says, "Is AT&T out to destroy the brick and mortar theater business with the recent Warner streaming deal? How do you see theater surviving?" I think that's a difficult one for me to talk about from a technology point of view, because COVID had changed everything. Our habits have changed. So how much have our habits really changed? When was the last time you went to a movie theater? One of the things I miss. I miss live theater incredibly, because that was such a big part of my life. So I don't think that we can talk honestly about what happens with the technology partners until we understand what's happened with our social structure. If we get back in a reasonable amount of time to being comfortable in large groups at events, I think theaters are going to come back just as strong as ever. There's something brilliant about being able to sit in a theater and sharing that experience with our community. We love that. We love the nature of live theater. We love that unique experience. And even just, you can remember the great movies that you saw, that of the franchises you were interested in, and how much better it is with a group of 1,000 people in the same room with you, all reacting and getting all the energy and all of the kind of that, just the whole spectacle. So I think theaters, their survival is going to completely be dependent on how comfortable we are getting back into groups. I don't think the technology will affect that much. Do you get as excited about watching a premiere or something new at home as you did going to the theater? I don't. I think that we've got a long ways to go. Mark Cottle says, "Do you think markets may emerge for services that don't mine your data for profit but charge a fee?" What a great question. I'd pay for a good email and search if it came with privacy. What a mature person you are, sir. I wonder if the world really is ready to do that. Wouldn't it be great if they were? And if somebody had the courage to launch it? The problem is you have to have such an ability. You have to be in a position that you can do as good charging, as at least close to as good charging as what they give for free. So you've got to come up to close to Google. So if DuckDuckGo had a unified service that included their search, which is almost, as far as I'm concerned, pretty much as good as Google's for most things, and they had private email that they promised not to mine your data, would you pay for that? And question for everybody, how much would you pay for that? Is that worth $9.95 a month? Is it worth $19.95 a month? What would that be worth to have that? And then what about a social platform? What about a social network layered on top, where you can actually have conversations with people and have zero ads coming in and know that your data is not being mined? And as if it's not enough things for me to ask you to consider, would you trust them? Would you trust that they aren't doing that? Those are darn good questions. I like that. I don't have an answer, Mark, but thanks for asking the question. It is awesome. Andrew, in 2021, Apple will be having MacBook Pro 14 and 16 inch and with the M and mini LED screen. How likely with Apple's advanced M1 to have more RAM than 32 gigabyte? Okay, I believe that I've read, and I'm not 100% certain on this, but I think that 32 gig might be the limit of memory that they put on the M1 chip, because it's pre-baked. That every chip is the same, and they just turn on or off how much memory is available. So it's almost a little bit of a scam. I think that there might be some technical limitations where some of the memory is not as accessible, and so they make the ones that are slightly flawed, 8 gigabytes, and the ones that have more 16 gigabytes, and the ones that are more 32. I'm not positive on that. I'm not on solid ground, but I believe that they're all the same die. So I think that might be the limit, but somebody else, I'm sure there's somebody in chat that knows more about this than I do that will comment. But that's what's holding me back from getting the M1, is I would have bought it already if there was a 32 gig version. I think you would have as well, right, Liz?
I would have bought it on the first day.
Yeah. Having said that, all the reports I'm getting from my live streaming buddies and the people who have tested it, nobody's complained about 16 gig. Nobody.
I know, yeah, I did see that. I saw a bunch of YouTube reviews, and a lot of them said the 16 gig is as good as any high-performing PC out there. So
So
I'm
much
torn.
pressure. So much
I'm
pressure. What are you
torn.
going to do?
Although, just so people know, recently I found a leasing company here in the UK that does a Flexi 12 where it allows you to upgrade after 12 months. So I was thinking maybe I could just get this 16 gig, and end of next year for Christmas I'll upgrade to the 32.
Good point. All right. Adventures with Time. You didn't mention YouTube. Do you still think they're still going to be a powerhouse? Yeah, but it's just, every year for the last 6 years, we have said, if I've done one of these shows, and I haven't done one every year, but if I did one, I would say next year is going to be the year of video. And I would actually have that in the notes because I think it's ironic that this year, coming year, is going to be the year of video again. Yeah, I believe that it is. But I believe that live streaming, I believe that our media consumption habits, especially with COVID, will change and become far more boutique this year. That smaller players are going to be far more successful and far better able to leverage their presence. So smaller YouTubers are going to be more successful because just because we're now starting to niche down and we're starting to figure out how to leverage the marketplaces. Hat in hand with that, I think that the audio podcasts it's just going to explode this year, as not as the big guys figured out, because the big guys have kind of got it going, but as the niche players really kind of hit their stride. I think we're going to see more smaller podcasts, more smaller YouTube channels that are more successful, because the energy I hear from the creator community is we're starting to get. A lot of them are not trying to build big, but they're trying to build focused. I mean, I know that's certainly our philosophy, and I think that will make a difference. And YouTube still will be at the heart of that. And YouTube is, of all of the social platforms, it's still the most equitable. Having said that, YouTube does send shutters down all of our spines with some arbitrary decisions they make, such as just a couple of months ago saying, you know what, all of the small-time creators that don't have enough views on their channel to monetize so that they can't run ads, we're going to run ads on your videos without your input and make money off your ads. How do you like them, Apple? And so those sorts of things scare us when they very high-handedly make dictatorial things like and declarations like that. So there will be some fallout to that, but in the streaming video space, as far as user created, YouTube still has zero competition. Mo the Seeker, do you have any thoughts in relation to the COVID vacation and 5G technology? I don't know what it means, COVID vaccination or COVID vacation and 5G technology. I don't have any real revelations as far as that stuff goes. I'm pretty down the middle of the road kind of guy. We've been shutting down, and I'm just kind of following what our leadership here in Canada is telling us to do. So I'm just towing the line as far as that goes. I don't know what you mean by COVID vacation. So we'll go to the next question. Scott's asking, what about Microsoft attempting to put Skype back in the game with Zoom, Google, and Meet, etc.? Yeah, it's an interesting decision Microsoft has, and an interesting challenge they have, because Microsoft Office 365 is really, I guess, the best Office package. But just like what we were talking about, they're not Skype is not as good a tool as Zoom. I don't believe, for meetings. Google Meet is not as good as either one. I think the problem with Skype is its history. It's been around too long, and too many people have negative connotations with it. And so I think that I don't think that there's going to be a consolidation in the online meeting space. I think it'll continue to be a dog's breakfast. And if you're in a company, you'll standardize on one platform, and your company will get comfortable with that platform, and you won't even know really what's happening with the others. For those of us that kind of dabble in all forms of technology, it's going to continue to be a scramble, because we're going to have to pay attention to what each one does. And I don't know about you, but it drives me a little bit crazy when I do a meeting. I expect Zoom features, and they're not there, and I go, oh yeah, we can't do that in this one, and trying to remember which features are within each platform as we kind of jump around depending on who we're meeting with. It can be a little bit frustrating. Good news for people who make videos on how to use this stuff. It's not going to get any easier. The Elder Law Professor. I love that name. Any thoughts on Windows-based systems? Does Apple finally win the PC war? Jesus, that's a good question. I think Windows, this M1 chip might be the game changer. It might begin Apple has held its own with the creative community for the last 5 or 6 years, done really well. And I think that they've managed to keep a real premium on their hardware too, which nobody else has been able to do. And now they have the hardware to go with it. See, I didn't even talk about this in the video, but the M1 chip is not just a great chip, but it has an operating system that's tailor-made for it by the same manufacturer. The challenge with Intel and with Windows has always been, and even with Apple and Intel previously, is the chip manufacturer and the author of the operating system were two different companies, so they weren't in the same building. They weren't talking to each other the same way, so it wasn't integrated. This new integration between the M1 chipset and Apple's OS, it could be profound. It could be tough. It could be tough for Windows this year. Andrew Titcom, can e-commerce, which needs to be cheaper, switch successfully to social media? Could it actually deliver it? I think we're seeing a real evolution in e-commerce. I didn't talk about it because I'm certainly not an expert on it, but from personal use, we use tools like TransferWise now, which 2 years ago we would have just been floored by. You see how Shopify is growing in so many ways. Stripe is so much more accessible as an e-commerce solution for small-time players. A small business like our business and like many of your businesses could never have the kind of e-commerce horsepower and the ability to do transactions, to take credit card payments, to even take debit card payments, to have recurring transactions where people buy memberships or subscriptions. It's so easy and so approachable now that we've already had a change. We've already had a shift, and those tools are just getting better. If you haven't watched our video on TransferWise, watch it. It is a game changer for anybody that has to do cross-border payments. It's just wonderful. And I think that it goes outside of the world of social media. The whole online commerce game is it's really on fire. And we didn't even talk about Bitcoin, which I still don't understand. All right. Do you get any tips to get approval for LinkedIn Live? No, I haven't even tried to get approval for LinkedIn Live. So I have no tips for that, unfortunately. Although I did just get accepted into whatever that newest audio app is that everybody's talking about. I applied for it the other day, and I see I haven't signed in, but everybody's talking about it's the newest form of Blab. But no, I don't know how to get LinkedIn Live.
Oh, I got to find out about that.
Oh, let's do this. I created another little video as a promo to thank people and to mention to thank their patrons and stuff. Let me just run this little message from our sponsors, which is you, and then we'll be back with more questions in just a second. I hope you're enjoying Webinar Wednesday, and I want to let you know that there are 2 ways that you can ensure that Webinar Wednesday stays on the air, and both of them are offering us some form of financial support. The first is Dottotech is a community-funded channel supported through the generosity of our patrons at Patreon. If you stop by patreon.com/Dottotech, you can discover exactly what you can do to help support us and what perks we give you in return. We ask for $10 a month, and the main perk is you get access to our Webinar Wednesday archives. If you're not interested in Patreon, but you do want to offer some financial support to keep us on the air, then the Super Chat here in YouTube Live is probably the best way for you to indicate a level of support and help keep us on the air. Regardless of whether or not you decide to support us financially or just through your attendance and participation in chat, we appreciate each and every one of you. There we go. How's that? Was that cool?
That was lovely. Yeah.
That's taking advantage of some of the features that are built in now that are built in to Restream, the ability for me to add little video clips that we run in like that. So that's kind of fun.
That's very cool. I love it.
Yeah, that was an unusual day. It wasn't raining. It's been raining here like crazy. Oh, Andrew Barn. Scott's asking me iOS versus Android. My thoughts. I don't really have any on that. I think Android is. It's like the Windows Mac world. Android feels to me clunky always whenever I use an Android phone compared to the integration of iOS. That's probably the biggest thought there. but I am in the Apple ecosystem, and the main reason that I use the iPhone is, frankly, iMessage, and my whole family, we're all on iPhones, and just that integration for my loved ones, it's what makes it easy. I have to say that. Andrew Byrne, what about low Earth orbit satellite broadcast system to Apple devices directly? Well, not just to Apple devices, but I know Facebook has been investing in this technology as well. And bandwidth is just becoming phenomenally accessible. There's probably, and it's probably the voice of privilege talking here, because I live in a community where I have fiber to my wall, and I just upgraded it to 1 gigabit fiber. And so now I don't even think about bandwidth anymore as I'm doing anything. So it's become, but when I say privilege, I realize that every community doesn't have that. And when you do have it, you just kind of very quickly accept it as just the way things are, and it becomes just part of the fabric of your life. Those low Earth orbiting satellites creating a mesh over the planet, bringing high speed internet to areas that don't have it, that could be a real playing field leveler for many communities and many people who are maybe a little bit disenfranchised. I'm excited about it. I don't know which, whether it's what's happening with the Facebook one, or the ones that Elon Musk is working on, or Apple. I don't know which one is going to win the day and which one has the best bet, but it's super exciting technology. Also very scary, because isn't this how Terminator started? Isn't it? It is, I think. Is a satellite system over top of us. So scary. But then the COVID vaccine, that's how every zombie movie starts as well. We've got lots to be afraid of. That's really as well. I thought having separate video cards gave better performance than integrated video cards. Has Apple solved that? From what I hear, and what I've learned about the M1 chip, is that I don't know if they've solved it, but the economies of scale of their integrated chip and the way the buses work, the way the pathways work for the different buses, means that I think that they've just overcome issues with brute force, with brute capability, just super high speed, and instant communication between all of the different integral components of the computer. There's been some talk that there might be some sort of external video processing unit for the M1 chips, but from everything I hear, the M1 chips are just rocking at 4K already. All of my live streaming friends are saying that it's brilliant. So I don't know if Apple solved it, or it was solved just because of the unique bus structure of the way that their chip design is working. Bob Poole says, is there still truth that U.S. internet speeds are amongst the worst in the developed world? I can't tell you. I don't know. I will tell you that I think your mobility network is far more advanced than many other countries. Here in Canada, we pay a real premium, but I don't know about your terrestrial internet speeds. But that really, I think that is also very regional in the challenges. Isn't complete privacy complete isolation? You're probably right. Good one. Any thoughts on Windows-based? Oh, we've already answered that question. I think we've got through them. And look at that.
Yeah. Wow.
We are done. We are up to speed. And we still have, how many people? We still got 360 people. Folks, thank you so much. Let me tell you what's coming up next week on the big show. April, do you want to work next week, Liz, rather than April? Shall I say that this is now your gig?
I don't know. It was hard work.
I know.
It was hard work, Steve.
We put a lot into Webinar Wednesday. We really put out the effort. Here's what's coming up next. Next week is going to be fun. This was fun, I think, but next week is way more fun, because next week we have an App Wednesday, which is our contest where we bring in experts who are going to bring us their best apps, and we're going to focus on productivity, because it's the end of the year. We should be looking at productivity apps for the new year. So next week we have. Let me just call up my notes here. Just a minute. Just give me a half a second here. Next week we've got. Anyways, it's App Wednesday. We're going to be talking productivity apps. You're going to love the lineup. It's going to be just awesome. And you will be getting an email to register if you're signed up for our mail list. So that's what we're going to be doing next week. And I think April will be back next week. So that's going to be fun. And that's going to be our last, I think that's our last show of the year, isn't it?
It is, yes, the last one. I'm so sad.
I'm so glad 2020 is over.
That's true. We want to get to 2021 as quick as possible.
Indeed we do. Indeed we do. So folks, we will wrap things up. We will call it a day. Thanks so much for everybody, for all of your support in the suggestions that we did over the years, and how engaged everybody is. I got to tell you, doing, I used to do live radio each and every week, and it's tough when doing live radio, for example. If you're not getting the calls, you feel like you're always kind of filling in. But the interaction that this community does, the suggestions they offer, the thoughts that they share, the opinions, and how just civilized everybody is in our community, it floors me each and every week. And we greatly appreciate that. We greatly appreciate what we've built here. So I hope that you appreciate it as well. Check your email. We will. The replay will be coming, and everybody make sure you've registered. We will send you all of the links for everything that we covered today. Thank you, Liz. You overcame all of your fears of being in front of everybody. You might have nightmares tonight, but you did a great job filling in for April. But we won't tell her that. We'll tell her you struggled. Okay, just so she feels a little better.
Yes. Thank you for having me, guys. It's been so much fun.
Bye. All right, folks. Until next time. Have fun storming the castle.